Good afternoon and welcome to Wading into Change, Water's Role in Climate Action for Business. My name is Madeline Lockyer and I'm the Sustainability Business Development Manager at Waterscan. It's a true privilege to be joined here today by Eleanor Pendle, Sustainability Consultant, and Barry Miller, Chief Technology Officer at Waterscan. For those of you who have not heard of Waterscan before, we are an end-to-end sustainable water management firm. We have over 30 plus years of experience and expertise in sustainable water management, and we work with some of the largest businesses across the globe, including Heineken, Coca-Cola, and Nando's. We also work with a range of really prominent organisations in the UK, including Sainsbury's, British Telecommunications, otherwise known as BT, and David Lloyd Leisure. We hope to have a really practical and commercially grounded conversation today that will traverse three key themes. Firstly, the importance of data and a proactive approach to water management. Secondly, how acting on water also means acting on climate. And thirdly, the investment and funding required to scale commercially viable solutions. Water is where climate change hits first. Too much, too little, too polluted. Every industry feels it, from farms to factories to data centres, even financial institutions. Yet, the pressures don't converge in the same way. They manifest very differently. For some, it's fragile supply chains. For others, it's halted production lines, whilst others see rising compliance costs. So, to kick us off, Barry, I'm going to come to you first. How, in your experience, are different industries experiencing the water-related impacts of climate, and what unique challenges does this create?
Thank you. Yes, well, it really is sector specific is the first thing I would point out. It varies enormously between different types of businesses. Take leisure and hospitality as a really good example, actually. It's probably the sector we engage with most. The consumption in leisure and hospitality, it varies from typical domestic type usage through to food prep, through to higher use individual items like swimming pools. Now, I think the important thing to remember about that industry, it's classed as non-critical. So we have to remember if you hit that really particular drought demand scenario where there's an issue, the impact is closure. The impact is loss of revenue. It's a really clear, direct operational impact. If you move towards larger industry, towards food and beverage manufacturing, or even data centers, as you say, is kind of the hot topic of the moment, actually. I think for those businesses, actually, what's often overlooked is the need to consider their social license to operate. These types of industries, they may well be deemed critical, but they need to consider that they could end up in the really unwelcome position of actually competing with their neighbour for a limited resource. I think that's where plans come into play, really. It's essential, those kind of businesses, they have mitigation and view them as opportunities, really, and consider not just the internal stakeholders, but also local, external stakeholders.
Fantastic. And Eleanor, I'll bring you in on this conversation as well. In your experience, say in the hospitality and leisure sector, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think one place that has felt the impacts of water-related climate change really strongly is Spain. So last year, for example, in Catalonia, there was a really severe drought, and one of our hospitality and leisure customers has a couple of sites in the region, so they really experienced this firsthand. So what happened was the reservoir levels that feed the region, they fell below 16%, which triggered emergency drought restrictions. And so phase one of this included restrictions like not being able to refill freshwater swimming pools in most cases, as well as reducing pressure, which obviously is a really clear direct impact on these sorts of organisations. And if the situation had worsened in terms of water resources, further restrictions could have been put in place, such as banning showers in these sorts of business environments. And this has direct impacts on, say, membership discounts being required or even sites needing to be closed.
One connection that often gets a lot less airtime is the connection between water and carbon. It's not a side note, it's a core relationship. And indeed, here yesterday, the South African Minister for Water and Sanitation on the centre stage, her words were, "We cannot separate water from energy." Every litre that is pumped, treated, heated, or moved has an associated carbon cost. Yet too often, organisations treat these issues in silos. Carbon here, biodiversity here, growth somewhere else. The challenge then is, how do we build strategies that reflect the extremely cross-cutting nature of water and give it the structure it deserves? And so, Barry, when we think about this and the constellation of connections, water, climate, energy, carbon, what does that mean for business strategy moving forward?
Well, I'll probably start by saying this isn't a new issue. This is, as long as I've worked in water, actually, I think the link between water and carbon's been poorly understood, or at the very least, poorly considered. And not just with smaller organizations, I mean, with really complex organizations who have looked at their entire supply chains, still water is poorly understood in terms of its carbon impact. I think some parts of it are quite clear. As you mentioned, hot water. So when we heat hot water, really direct, clear carbon impact, energy use to heat water. And when you waste hot water rather, there's that double impact of carbon and water. That's pretty clear. Still viewed through an energy focus, though, rather than water itself, I find. But don't forget, again, as you mentioned, simply for the privilege of having water treated and delivered to your premises and moved around within your premises, there is embedded carbon. It's where there's water, there is carbon. I think even private water supplies aren't exempt from this. I mean, if you're maybe fortunate enough to operate on a thermal hot spring, fantastic, but that's pretty rare. Where there's water, there's carbon embedded within it. I think positively, though, I'm increasingly seeing organizations take a holistic view of their strategies. That is coming forward now. Really starting to look at that water, energy, carbon nexus and how one change pulls on another change and how all three are interlinked and actually affect one another. It's positive. So for me, the key for the strategic plan is it's got to be informed, it's got to be strategic, yes, obviously, but it also has to move down into detail at some point because the detail is important. That's where you find the risks, the mitigations, the opportunities. And for me, actually, all of that starts with data.
And picking up on that last point there, which is oh so important, data is what makes these connections real. It allows us to demonstrate the really tangible impacts of water on risk, on resilience, and ultimately on the balance sheet. The right data at the right granularity, covering the right scope, is essential. And this is where water differs from carbon. With carbon, the goal was clear. We have to reduce, sequester, remove. With water, the challenge is far more contextual. It's about access, it's about quality, it's about location. And that means that we need very different data sets and frameworks to approach it with, whilst at the same time making sure that they integrate with existing approaches to climate, to carbon. So, and Eleanor, I'm going to come to you on this one. With all that in mind, if the impacts of carbon and water are so closely linked, can the solutions, the adaptation strategies, the mitigation plans be linked, and how so?
I guess the short answer to that is absolutely. I think there's been a lot of really interesting discussion throughout this conference about the need to go above and beyond volumetric approaches to water stewardship. But actually, water volume is a really crucial aspect of whatever we're doing in this space. So I think the two ways that businesses can reduce carbon through reducing their water use is exactly like that. So you reduce your consumption, and more specifically, you can reduce your hot water consumption. So if we start with the former, we've been working with Sainsbury's for more than 15 years now, and they're really proactive about their water reductions. So one way they achieve this is through proactive leak management and detection processes. And this involves looking at real-time data to provide the insights that means that we can identify where issues are happening and then resolve them more quickly, which reduces this lost water. So through these processes, Sainsbury's was actually able to save more than 100,000 cubic metres of water last year, which is enormous water saving. and also has really strong commercial sense as well, because this came with a saving of £365,000. And then Sainsbury's is also looking to embed water reductions elsewhere in its strategy as well. So, for example, with its new superstores, the design specifications include rainwater harvesting, which means that within the fabric of buildings in the new sites, water reductions and water efficiency is going to be able to be realised from day one. And then if we move on to reducing hot water consumption specifically, we've also been partnering with Whitbread for many years now, and they've got really excellent evidence behind the value, both in terms of water savings and in terms of commercial benefits of their new lower flow shower heads. And this more water efficient technology has been demonstrated to have great impacts to the extent that they're now partnering with a number of water companies in the UK to roll out this technology, which, really is a testament to combined efforts towards shared goals. And I think showering in particular is a really powerful way that hot water reductions can be realised. And this is also being picked up through not purely technological approaches, like behaviour change as well. So, for example, the University of Surrey have done some excellent research on this. And one study that I found particularly compelling was where they looked at the impact of eco-feedback, so a timer next to the shower for users, alongside motivational messaging. And they studied the effects of these two combined approaches on 17,500 shower events in hotels across the UK, Spain and Denmark. And they showed really robust data that meant that actually we can now see that up to a quarter reductions in shower durations are possible through behaviour. And I think all of this really goes to show that when we combine different approaches to reducing water and hot water, we are enacting change across a variety of scales, whether this be the scale of individuals, so staff members or end users in these hospitality and leisure businesses in this case, all the way up to site level change, operational wide rollouts, and ultimately sector leadership.
That's fantastic to hear those practical examples. It really makes the work that we're doing come to life. And Barry, if I can bring you in briefly, what are your experiences in this space as well?
Well, I think I'd probably go back to what I said earlier about that strategic view and ensuring it cascades down to site level. That's actually where we spend a lot of our time now. We tend to look at the sort of the micro-geographic factors that affect individual premises within a group at catchment level usually. That's where you can really help prioritise action and ensure funding is spent in the best way to kind of get that maximum bang for your buck where it matters most. And then really once you've done that, it's just about working through the opportunities. I would caution to just avoid that silver bullet mentality, this cure-all of go for this massive reward. That's not what it's about actually in my experience. I tend to find that allowing small incremental change, then that creates the case for something bigger. It tends to be where the win's at. Might be something as simple as a fittings review, as Eleanor said. So Whitbread's a great example, looking at the domestic type fixtures and fittings. Starting there, I would always say don't underestimate the power of toilets and taps to make change in your organisation. Internet of Things tech has really changed this for me as well. The advent of myriad new sensors, small, low-cost, really cost-effective sensors for everything from measuring shower duration through to water temperature, through to a number of occupants that have used a facility. These kind of sensors are delivering more data than we've ever had before. We can interrogate inside premises in a way we've never been able to do, really, not just reliant on simply the volumetric consumption at the meter as we have done in the past. And I think what I would add to that really is at a customer level, we're seeing demand for that. It's actually increasing a real ask for that granular, real-time data that can enable them not just to kind of focus on leaks, which is great and something that must be done, but actually use the data as a precursor to make decisions about their properties in the future, or even as behavioural change programs.
Fantastic. And I think a really common thread between what you both have spoken about there is, at the end of the day, when ESG and commercial ambitions are designed intentionally to compound and not compete, that's when ambition is transformed into measurable impact. And that is what's key. I'm now going to shift the conversation towards financial incentives and funding models. It's worth noting that when carbon was given a price, it unlocked an entirely new market. It drove innovation, investment, and action. Water is following a similar path. In fact, yesterday I attended a workshop where they talked about combined decarbonisation indicators. So CO2 emissions saved and meters cubed saved. The challenge, and therefore the opportunity then, is ensuring the solutions are both technically robust and commercially viable. And when we get that right, we don't just protect resources. We create new markets, new products, new services that generate revenue. And therefore, if reaping the rewards of climate and water action depend on investment and sustained funding, where do we start? And how do we ensure there's a sufficient business case there? Barry, if I can come to you first for your reflections on that.
Well, I think for me, the single greatest early action you can take is actually investing in data. I mean, it's not necessarily the most exciting thing to do, and it doesn't necessarily deliver to the bottom line. So that can be hard, but actually, it's essential. Everything cascades out of good data. I like to talk about the data sandwich. So data before, data after. Treat these things like science. You must baseline and validate. With that comes success. Without that, you're doomed to failure. You really are. And then from there, it's just be proactive. It's too late to make the funding case when the impact has occurred, revenue's already suffering, and you're operating under an emergency or even in a recovery position. Trying to make a business case for a return on investment at that point when revenue's already been hit, that's hard. Do it in advance. Think ahead on this. It's essential. And start small. As I mentioned earlier, small impacts, WC fittings, tap aerators, really low cost devices you will find have the best return on investment initially. And you use those small things to create that thirst for change. You validate those wins, you validate those small changes, and then that helps you build the case. Shout about it as well. I mean, you really need to tell everybody about this. Enter the awards, go to the shows, talk about it, publish it in the trade publications, make sure it's known that you're leading in water. And when you establish that direction of travel, that's when you'll start to unlock the backing for the higher risk, higher reward items, effluent recovery, zero liquid discharge, the big ticket items that you really, really want to stand out for.
And Eleanor, if I can come to you, what are the more innovative funding models that you're seeing coming out of the UK, particularly within the water sector?
Yeah, so Ofwat's a really good example of that. We're really excited about the new water efficiency lab that's coming up, but the more long-standing one is the Ofwat Innovation Fund. And this is a really great opportunity for businesses that want to experiment, to do things differently, to learn, share ideas, be creative, to really be incentivized to form new partnerships through this sector-wide fund. So this is one that's particularly close to myself because last year we submitted a bid bringing together 15 partner organisations, which included 6 Waterscan businesses, to put together a behaviour change bid that aim to run 3 sector-specific randomised control trials, which aim to use behaviour change to demonstrate measurable water reductions in bathroom environments. It was a really exciting bid, and we were selected for the judging panel. And although we weren't successful in securing funding this year, we were really encouraged by the great feedback as well as the motivation of our business partners. So we're really looking forward to refining our proposition further and going again this year. But I think the broader point here is that actually businesses who want to be proactive and to work together can actually exploit and to make the most of the opportunities available because it's what the sector wants and it's ultimately also what business wants.
And Barry, if I can come to you quickly before we wrap up, what are you really hoping to see businesses move the dial on in the next 1 to 3 years?
I think it's just more noise, actually. I want to hear businesses calling for help on this issue because it's not a business issue. This is regulators, utilities, and end users, and they need to work in concert to deliver the change on this one. We've got tariff, technology, and behaviour. They're the 3 big levers, and we need to pull all of them.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for your thoughts today. Thank you to everyone who joined us in person and to those who joined us online. I guess at the end of the day, what is measured, managed, and monetized moves the needle. And when it comes to water, the central thread for the climate agenda, the right needle can change the whole tapestry. We thank you so much for joining us today and look forward to your questions later.